Welcome listeners to today's Inflection Point. And as we all know, that Inflection Point is a series that we run a couple of times every week, wherein a top leader comes and talks about his or her experiences and a turning point in their lives which shaped them the way they are today. So Nirja Ganesh is not a new name to people who are active on social media, and she is a Women in Impact awardee thrice. Plus, she also has done a lot of work in the inclusion and diversity field, and her passion is to help women and students, basically to help them achieve their passion. So she has never been stuck to a box, and she is known for promoting and changing the way things work with women in the professional world. And of course, she's a known name, and I would call she's a node for women in India at least. So without wasting much time, over to you, Nirja.
Thank you so much, Vaishali, and thank you to all of you who came on time. We have limited time, but I will make the best use of it. So we are talking about speaking up, and I thought I'll start by quoting Michelle Obama, the former US First Lady. She says, "If you have a seat at the table, speak up. Shame on us if we sit by and let an imposter talk us down. If we don't speak up, our voices are never involved in the process of problem solving, and we don't get to the right answers." I'm constantly telling young women to speak up and talk. Don't waste your seat at the table. If you're scared to use your voice, then you have to get up and let someone else in there who's going to use it. This was what she said. And while she speaks about women, I think it is relevant to everyone. So today I will narrate some stories which might give you some triggers to reflect on the importance of speaking up. So the first story is about this meek, timid, shy student who was doing an advanced diploma in systems management from NIIT after completing her graduation in science. This was a 4-semester course spread over 2 years. When she was in the third semester, a global technology company, Sonata, hired some of them from that batch as contract programmers for 3 months. They had a few weeks of the third semester remaining. Now, all of them were over the moon that such a reputed company had hired them even before they had completed their course. So what if it was only 3 months of a contract assignment? There were rumors that if they did well, they might get converted into permanent employees of the organization. It was a full-time 8 hours job, and they had to work in shifts. Now, many of the students who had been chosen from NIIT for this took a break from NIIT as they wanted to do their very best to ensure they were hired as permanent employees at the end of the contract period. All of them were finishing up NIIT with 3 semesters. Only this particular student had another semester remaining, a full 6-month fourth semester. And she wouldn't have been able to do both the classes and the work because it was shift work and there were clashes with the timings of her school and the work. And the other thing was she couldn't afford to take a break from the studies like other students because her father had allowed her to study this course. It was a very expensive course, which was never in his plans initially because he was looking out for the right groom for her. And she had no clue if she would be able to continue her studies after marriage. So she didn't want to lose out the opportunity of completing her studies. At the same time, she did not want to let go of this fantastic work opportunity. Now, what does a meek, timid, shy girl do? Maybe she'll try to figure out a solution in her head all by herself. Or she might speak to her parents who tell her to concentrate on studies because that's the big monetary investment that they have made, right? You cannot ignore that. Or she may want to talk to some of her friends who might suggest that such a work opportunity may never come again. So just take a break from studies. After all, it's 3 months contract and there's no guarantee that, it will extend or, become a permanent employment. Or just try and do the best in both, which might mean average performance in both studies and at work because she might have to miss some classes. She might not be able to complete work deliverables because of the clash. Mind you, she was a topper at the institute. She went and spoke to her skip level manager. She told the manager about the predicament that she was in and not knowing what to do. A couple of days later, the manager came back to the girl and said that she had spoken to the management and they had decided to make an exception for her. The exception was to allot a dedicated computer to her in the office. This story is set in the early 1990s when people didn't own computers at home. So she could come in anytime to work, not bounded by the shifts, go whenever she had to her institute, as long as she met the weekly deadlines and submitted the deliverables at the quality standards that were set for everyone. The 3-month contract extended to 6 months and then to 9 months. After 9 months, the company made everyone a permanent employee, including this girl. The only difference was that those who had taken a break from the studies could never go back to finishing it, while this girl had finished her advanced diploma, topping the institute, and also got the same work opportunity as others. Now, after working for 2 years at Sonata, this girl joined another company called as Manhattan Associates. After another 2 years, she joined the IT division of the ANZ Bank, where she grew into an assertive leader. She later moved to Capgemini after 16 years at ANZ. She left Capgemini after 5 years as Director of IT Delivery. After completing 25 years in the IT field, she went on to follow her passions by heading the Jobs for Her Foundation, working at the National Education Society of Karnataka, volunteering at many not-for-profits. Today, she mentors and is a consultant at Aspire for Her, a platform established to change the gender diversity equation in India. She conducts a lot of leadership and mindset change programs for corporates and also gets invited to speak at many conferences across the globe. This meek, timid, shy girl who did not speak up is Neeraja Ganesh, who is going to spend the next 10 minutes with you all to impress upon you why it is important to speak up. I still don't know what made me go to Suman, my skip level manager, that day. I guess it was the voice in my head which must have asked me, what's the worst that can happen? It couldn't have been worse than the situation that I was already in, right? Sonata might have asked me to keep working in shifts if I had wanted to keep the job, and then I might have had to decide to take a break from studies or try to manage both, which obviously wouldn't have given me the best results. I can never imagine how my career and life would have shaped up if I had not had that conversation in 1992 December, exactly, I think 30 years ago. But I know this for sure, that the life that I have lived since the decision in 1992 and the IT career that I had because of the foundation set at Sonata is something that I have enjoyed. Now you might be wondering, how did this meek, timid, shy girl transform to someone who speaks and asserts her point of view in any situation? I continued as a quiet girl through my job at Sonata, Manhattan Associates, and for the first 5 years at ANZ. In those days, in the role of a programmer, you didn't necessarily have to interact with too many people in the team. You were given detailed specifications to code, and you coded as per that. You did your part of the testing of the code and handed it over to the project lead. I was good at my job, and hence I moved up the ladder. In 2001, my team lead was sent on site for a 6-month assignment. In those days, leadership was about who was the most technically qualified person in the team. Team leads were more like tech leads and were not really evaluated and hired for leadership skills like today. I happened to be the most technically qualified person, and I was appointed as the stand-in team lead for the next 6 months till my team lead actually came back. Now, suddenly all my peers, most of them who were as experienced and knowledgeable as I was, became my direct reports. It was also the time in the team and organization where major transformations were happening. The company was going through a CMM assessment, and we were to report on our team's process compliance every week to the managing director at a weekly meeting. Now, for those of you who don't know much about CMM, it's like any other quality standard that an organization gets certified, which elevates the organization. It's well known as having to follow really high quality standards. Now, my team was struggling to follow the processes that were set up as part of this transformation. When I answered the self-assessment checklist, which was the report that the managing director would look at during that weekly meeting and ask questions if a team was not improving on their scores, I had a lot of non-compliances. I was one of those very sincere people who took every question literally, and if we did not follow it, I said no to that question. Obviously, our team's compliance score was very low. In fact, I found out later that it was the lowest in the organization. Now, before the managing director could start the meeting, I looked around for other team leads who were doing similar work that our team was doing. We were a production support team. So this team used to receive calls from customers when the software did not work, and we would provide workarounds, and we would also analyze the issue that was raised. I asked another team leader who was also doing similar work how he was able to follow the process when we were struggling. He said he just ensured compliance. As an example, there was a question that was asked in that checklist: does your team follow coding standards? Now, production support teams don't code. Once they analyze and find that the code needs to be fixed, they send it to another team which does the maintenance of the software. That's how the structure of that organization was then. Hence, there was no need for any coding standards. This checklist did not have an option for not applicable. So I said no. This other team lead said that he created coding standards, put it on a drive, and gave himself a yes to the question. That's compliance. Now, I would never do that. I realized it was a waste of time and effort. So in that meeting, this meek, timid, shy girl spoke up. I requested the managing director if he could send someone from the quality assurance team to our team the next day so that the quality assurance person could suggest to us how we could follow the stipulated processes for the kind of work that we were doing. Everyone around me was shocked for having spoken up and suggesting something so ridiculous, they thought, and accepting that we were struggling to follow processes in such a large forum. Everyone had decided that the MD would throw me out of the role of the team lead, if not from the organization, for this poor performance, and then this audacious suggestion. The next day, the MD made an announcement. What do you think it was? No. He did not announce that Neerja Ganesh has been fired. He announced a new concept called quality representatives, who would sit with every team once a week to understand the work that they were doing and suggest how the process could be followed. When the QR, the quality representative, came to our team, he realized that the processes that were set up were for development projects. Hence, it had questions related to coding standards, etc. It was just not appropriate for production support projects. So, this feedback was relayed to the managing director, and the entire process bank was revamped. Now, see how speaking up not only helped me and my team, but the entire organization. Had this not been realized upfront, maybe it would have been very late around the formal pre-assessment time, and this delay would have been very costly to the organization. That's when I realized the power of speaking up. Of course, till date, I have deep respect for the managing director who heard me out and was open to, listening to me and implemented my suggestion. And this realization that people were open to listening, maybe debating, but with a good intent. And this Neerja Ganesh transformed that day from a meek, timid, shy girl to a woman who speaks her mind wherever, whenever there is a need. Now you might be able to relate to what Michelle Obama said. If we don't speak up, our voices are never involved in the process of problem solving, and we don't get to the right answers. I'll take a pause for a minute, for a few seconds here to see if there are questions. Vaishali, I have one more story to narrate.
Yeah, so I think Kanika is asking that does speaking up depend on the kind of manager you have?
I think you must speak up regardless. If you know the kind of manager, if you think that there is something about him or her because of which you may not get a supportive response, you may have to strategize a bit. Then there are many other methods, where you might have to bring in allies and, use your networks, etc. But that's a talk for another day. But you must speak up. You should. I mean, I will never tell people to, shut up just because you feel that someone in the organization will not support you.
Thanks, Nirja. Just related question. In your
Yeah,
case, the risk paid up. There might be cases where the risk doesn't pay up. So, what
right,
suggestions would you give to somebody who's considering to speak up on
right.
evaluating the risks?
Absolutely, a fantastic question. And that's why I was talking about this mantra that I have, which is what's the worst that can happen? You must think about that and put down the worst case scenario. So in my previous, situation where I didn't know how to manage the shift work and classes, the worst was I might have to quit the job, I might have to quit the studies, or I might have to manage the two, right? Whichever way, it was not going to be worse, if there is a word called worse, than where I was in the situation. So I said, let me speak up and let's see what happens. In the second case, again, what's the worst? I mean, I'm sure nobody will throw you out of the company because you asked a question, you made a suggestion. Maybe they will perceive you as somebody, because you're a new team lead and you have such poor compliance scores. They may perceive you as someone who is not capable and might have moved you out of the role, and that's the worst case scenario I can imagine. But I was a person who wanted to do the right things for the team, because as a team lead, my team was looking up towards me to help them out of the situation. So you can't. So for me, removing me out of the team lead role probably did not, worry me as much, because I will still have a role, just not the team lead role. But I did put it out on table. So I think that evaluation of the risk is important. By asking that question, list down the worst case things, and if the worst case is scenario you're not able to, kind of put up with it, as I said, you'll have to be a little strategic. Okay, so let me, narrate another story. I hope we have some time. Vaishali, can we extend this for a few minutes, if possible?
Yeah, we have about 5.5 minutes.
Okay, let me try to make this quick. So, I was one of 11 women who was selected for the Senior Women's Leadership and Development Program in one of the organizations. And these 11 women were selected across the globe. And this program was to be conducted in Paris. Now, the selection process was intense, with nominations going out, the selection panel vetting each nomination to finalize the 11 who got selected. It was a prestigious program to be part of, as it would allow training, networking with global leaders, and coaching from senior leaders to help you move into the roles that you aspired for. Also, these 11 would be the first choice whenever a global role opened up. Now, during the briefing that we all were given for this program, they spoke about the dress code. They said we had to wear Western formals. Now, I have never worn Westerns. Those who know me know that I'm always in saris and sometimes salwars. Even when I have traveled abroad for work, I've never worn a Western formal. I'll be in a salwar and a sari. I'm not comfortable in that. So I told the coordinator that I would wear salwars, as that is considered formals here in India. Now, she was taken aback because nobody probably had said this to her, and she's coordinated multiple programs till then, and many of them would have been a cohort of women leaders. So she kind of was worried about this thing that I said. I reminded her that this cohort of women leaders were handpicked based on their performance and potential to lead global programs, not what they wear. And I didn't think that someone would stop a leader from being part of this cohort just because she did not want to wear Western formals. I would wear what is accepted in India as formal wear. So she came back to me after a couple of days saying that I could wear salwars, but they should be in muted colors, like not the reds and oranges, I guess. So I picked up white, black, and gray salwars to go to this event. When I reached the venue of the program in Paris, I saw there were 3 other Indian women in the cohort, all of them complying to the Western formal dress code. And the others, who were from US, UK, and Japan, were wearing some nice, flowery, flowy, colorful skirts and pants, as it was the beginning of summer in Paris. Now, the question that I would like to leave with you all is, why did the women from India comply? If they wish to wear that, that's perfectly fine. I have nothing against that. But if it was only because it was stated, then why are you not questioning? The others from different parts of the globe did choose to wear what they were comfortable in, because the weather was, that kind of weather. Of course, they were still mindful of it being a professional setup. Hence, as Michelle said, don't waste your seat at the table. If you are scared to use your voice, then you have to get up and let someone else in there who's going to use it. So I used my voice and still managed to be at the table on my own terms. So if you're being invited to a table, it is for what you bring to the table as the unique individual who you are, not because you are a woman or a man or any particular category. Hence, speak up to rise up. Thank you.
Yeah, so if listeners have any questions, Nirja would be happy to.
Definitely. You have to speak up now. I wore a salwar for my graduation, Kanika says. No questions? And this is what happens, right? You have an opportunity here to ask, and if you're going to keep quiet, you lose that opportunity. I also say treat every interaction as an opportunity. You will not know what comes out of it. Divya, what is it? In what cases?
Kanika has joined the conversation. And I think there's a question from Divya as well
Yeah.
that when would you recommend not speaking up?
As I said, you have to definitely evaluate the situation, evaluate the context, and be a little strategic. You can't just be blunt on the face. But if there is something that is bothering you, if there is something that you have to put at the table, you should. I will give you a quick example, right? So I do all these leadership development programs. So there was this client that I was pitching for, and the proposal that I put out because they were looking at a long-term leadership development program, not long-term, but necessarily they were looking at something in terms of an intervention for 15 plus years of leadership experience of women, and they wanted them to move, to the next layer and pick up larger roles. So usually I think these kinds of programs have to run a little long term. You can't have, transformations overnight. So I had proposed a 6-month long program with, classroom sessions and mentoring and coaching and all of that. The HR told me that they want this to be done in 8 weeks because maybe, their appraisal cycle is coming up after that and they really want to see, if these women will move up and get promoted. Maybe that's the KPI that they had to, work with. For some reason, I really didn't fight it out. I said, okay, you want it in 8 weeks, I'll put out a proposal in for 8 weeks. And then I had to actually pitch it to the business leaders. And the business leaders actually asked me the same question. How do you think 8 weeks will transform someone? And I was really, caught there. I did try to answer something, but I knew that, I had fallen flat. And that particular program didn't come to me. So the reason I'm trying to say this is you have to. You have to. So I should have fought it out. When I say fought it out, not necessarily fought it out, but try to really convince and influence. So those are the terms you need to keep in mind. You have to have your way, but what are your knacks of, trying to influence it in these situations? So a lot of strategies will need to be, aligned, but do speak up.
Yeah, so Kanika, that's your chance to speak up.
Okay, thank you, Vaishali. Hello, Neeraj ji. It's a pleasure speaking to you. So I have a quick incident to tell you and then a question. A quick incident is when I finished my master's in Italy, I got internship from UN, and in a very famous NGO in Italy also offered me internship at the same time. So me and my husband were evaluating which one should we leave and which one should we join because both were really good. And then I told my husband, can I not do both of them? And my husband was like, why would UN let you do two? I said, let me write. And I wrote to both the NGOs saying, listen, I can do it. I'm ready to work at the weekends also, but I want both the workshop, both the internships. And both of them replied, okay, you can do it if you are keen on doing it. So I did both the internships.
Wonderful.
So yes, that's. But then my question, ma'am, is, there's this famous person, Ernesto Sorelli. He works a lot of NGOs in the world, and he's a very known person for NGOs and everything. He once said that you should not speak up until and unless you are asked for some help. And that is in context with when someone wants help or something is not really going well with some person individually or not. So should you speak up on your own for somebody else also, or we should wait for them to speak up for themselves and then support them?
I think we must allow everyone to